All right, everybody, it's Anthony Brogdon. I'm coming at you again, and I'm doing this live thing where I want to hear from people who tell Black history and what you know. And this is the third show. I got one more after this, and I haven't had anybody tune in. I'm getting bigger, though. I know it. I can feel it because I'm speaking all over the country where I tell Black history stories. So it's just a matter of time. I'm undaunted by the response that I've gotten to this. One gentleman came on the first day, and then we had to tune him out because he wasn't respectful, let's call it. But then he watched the whole show. So I'm gonna do this periodically. Um, and today I tell you what I want to talk about. I want to talk about how there are some Black folks who are not interested in Black history. Every so often here in Detroit, which is where I'm based, I work this bridge area, this vendor area near downtown, and it's in an area called Eastern Market, where on Saturdays people are shopping fruits and vegetables and meats and so on and so forth. And when I'm there, I get a little table and I put my books on the table. There's an Amy Johnson who's come on. Welcome, Amy Johnson. Thank you for joining us. Uh, would you like to say something? I can unmute you. I can unmute you or unmute yourself as you so see fit. But what I'm going to say is when I work this vendor area, there are a number of Black people who they see me standing there with my book. This is the book that I'm standing there and I'm selling, and I'll stand there and I'll say, "Hey, I wrote this book. Come check it out." And they'll be, and I can understand. It's not everybody is got to stop and look at it and so on and so on. People got time constraints. People, for various reasons, but there are a number of people who I'm not interested in that. And I get the impression that sometimes people are only interested in Black history during Black History Month. And then there's still some of those who, kind of, unless they're in school and it's kind of forced upon them, don't take the time out to attend some Black history event. So there's something to it. And then what gets me is that there'll be Black people who will say, "Oh man, we don't keep our history alive. We don't tell Black history." And I don't know if those are the same people who will also not be interested in taking a minute to talk with me about my book. I don't. If you don't buy it, that's fine. That's fine because I'm gonna sell it to somebody. I've had people reach out to me and want more than the one copy they bought initially. I've had people be excited when they do buy it. So I know it's not for everyone. But I think it just kind of gets me sometimes where there be some brothers and sisters who, and what's crazy about it, they'll be walking with a Juneteenth T-shirt or I'm Black History T-shirt or something of that nature, and they'll walk by and not even just take a minute to hear what I got to say. And again, I understand not everybody has to do it, but it is kind of noticeable to me. But me, I'm a positive thinker. I can stand on that bridge and I can sell 10 copies in an hour and a half. I can sell 10 copies in an hour and a half. And there are people who do stop and are really interested in what I got to say. Because it's some unique Black history. It's good Black history. It's the type of Black history that schools normally don't teach. I did not know that there were enslaved Black people who went to college. It just was not said to me in that form. And as I told you last week, the week before, I spoke in Martha's Vineyards, and to a group of older, 40s, 50s-year-old people. And when I told them some of them stories, I doubt if two of them said they had heard that before. I got people who will say that they did not know that there were wealthy Black people in the 1800s, and they'll send me a message. They've read the book, and they'll send a message. I had to go to the reference section to find out where you got that fact from. We've been brainwashed, everybody. We've been told a bag of goods that only leads us to feeling bad about one another. I got a feeling that some of them people who walk past my table don't think that I'm going to say anything different than what they already know. And there have been people who told me that. I said, man, did you know that there were enslaved Black people who own business? Yeah, man, I heard that before. Well, who do you know? Name a name that you know of. Well, man, Frederick Douglass. Oh, yeah, okay, true. People don't know. And I didn't know how Frederick Douglass made a living, but I did know he had a newspaper. But, I kind of thought he gave it away free. Oh, no. You had to get his newspaper by subscription. He had copies that he sold on newsstands or somehow. People and had people, as we might have looked at it back in our day, paper boys who sold the paper. Frederick Douglass' newspaper went national. And there were other Black newspapers that were nationally circulated. One of the ways that they effectively did it is because, and this is one of those little known facts that we don't really talk about, is how Black people supported one another. We still do. So when I told you at the beginning of this session that there are people who walk past, that is true. But then I also said that when I stand there for an hour and a half, I sell 10, 12, 13 books. There are people. And so I don't focus on those who don't want to know. It just kind of surprises me, though, to some degree, because I've always been one of those types that I've gone to Black expos throughout the country. I'm here in Detroit. I went to the Black Expo here in Detroit every year. When I got the kick on this Black history, I went every year, unless I was out of town. I went to the Black History Festival in Indianapolis. I took an extra $400-500 and I supported them brothers and sisters that had their own crafts, products that they designed themselves. It was either jewelry or little figurines or books and things of that sort. I went to a Black History Festival in Chicago that was on the grounds of the DeSable Museum. You talking about having a good time, and then they had George Duke perform, and towards the end of the evening. So I've always had a quest for this, not always, but I've always had a liking for it. It's just within the last 7 years when I came out with my second documentary, this one here, everybody. This a film, it's streaming on Amazon, This Business in the Black. When I began to investigate this, which talks about rich Black people in the 1800s, did I really get this quest going to learn more. I'll admit it, but I did have a liking to going to those Black History festivals. I remember that as a kid. I remember seeing the Jackson Five here in Detroit, and that's what they were called at the time. But it wasn't just them performing. They had those vendors. And I was amazed at some of the stuff that the brothers and sisters did. I've always loved the red, black, and green flag. I've always had a liking to going and I've been on a couple of occasions, the Shrine of the Black Madonna, which is a religious let's call it religious set here in Detroit. Uh, they have also a location in Atlanta. I went to that. I've been to the Nation of Islam. I was curious. I went in there and I was like, "What is this?" Because I was raised Christian and went to a Baptist church and then AME church and so on and so. Well, I thought the pastor, had a click with the pastor. Yeah, the denomination really didn't. I didn't have to stick to that. It was the pastor or something, and the vibe I felt at the church. So I've had this, personally, and I've only wanted to know people in my inner circle who also thought like I did. Now I've had some friends who, man, I don't need to hear about that Black history because and especially now because I say something Black history oriented almost every day. Every day I'm pushing my book in some form or fashion. I carry them in a little bag with a little drawstring and stuff like that. I rarely go somewhere without my book. I'll tell you a funny time. I mean, one time I didn't the Motown play. You might know about it. It was touring the country, and I went to the premiere of it here in Detroit, right? And so I got my tux on. I'm kind of knotted. I had the bag in the car, but I said, no, that ain't the right place to carry the bag of books and stuff like that. So I left it in the car. I had three people come up to me and say, man, I heard about you in the book and the DVD. You got one on you. I had to run to the car at intermission to go get one because they wanted it then. So I talk about this Black history daily. And so I kind of seek out other people who know some of this. And I don't profess to be no expert. It's too much of it. Most people who are professors at universities, they focus in on a particular type of Black history, a particular topic. Either it's, in Africa or some other part of the world, the Black history that happened in Portugal, in Mexico, in Europe, or the civil rights, or the Reconstruction period. Most people focus on some particular area. You can't know it all. And I try not to say, I don't know a lot about African and the Black history there, but I am interested. I don't know if you all know, and Amy, I don't know if y'all and other people who might be on here, I don't know if y'all know, I have my own podcast. It's called Strong Inspirations. I got over 500 videos where I've interviewed people around the world for them to tell Black history stories. And it's all kinds. And I've learned so much. But the one thing that dominates my understanding and enlightenment is how tenacious Black people are. Them folks have been putting stuff on our shoulders for a long time. And they've been telling us all these different stories that are really just made up about us. Africa is not no dark continent. I don't even know where you get that from. It's probably the warmest of continents that there is. There are countries. Oh, how about this? They got us thinking that Africa is all one big country. And then we'll be a little more astute, and then we'll think of Egypt, and they told us Egypt was not in Africa. But that's not true. And then there's other ones, like the one we know most of, South Africa. We've heard of that because of apartheid. But apartheid really did not dictate the history of South Africa. Black people ran South Africa for a long time. Apartheid, and again, excuse me for not knowing the exact number, and I probably could look it up real fast. Apartheid didn't last but about 20, 30 years. That came in about the 50s. in the 40s, somewhere around there. And then it really took height when America got wind of it and started saying, "Oh, now we've ended the apartheid that we had here in America," because what they had is the same thing we had years earlier. Jim Crow was apartheid, and the national or the international reaction to apartheid was the same as how we reacted to what they were doing, is how Europe had reacted to how we were doing, which is one of the reasons why we had to curtail that action. We didn't want the world thinking bad about us and the way we were treating Black people. So a lot of what Dr. King did in those marches and other people was they wanted news coverage so that the world could hear what was going on here and then reflect upon, oh man, if America's doing that, America ain't as great as they say they are. And when we had to escape America and go to Canada, it was after a few years of Canada abolishing their institutional slavery, and they had it too, that Canada said, when y'all freedom, when y'all bounties catchers and slave catchers come over here, you can't take nobody back. We don't agree with that institution. So it's been what people have said about us to make us think certain ways. And they've indoctrinated this in our mind. And so some of them people that walk past me on the bridge, I'm looking at it. My man got dreads. He got Black History T-shirt. Him and his girl, they looking like that, so on and so forth. Nose pierced, and that's a beautiful thing. Tattoo, love Black people, and will see me. And again, everybody got their own time schedule, and not stop and hear the story. I ain't saying you got to buy the book, but give me a minute to enlighten you. Give me a minute to enlighten you. I'll go anywhere, and I'll say this: when I'm on that bridge, when a white person walks past, I don't say anything, and that's my own idiosyncrasy. It's rare that when a white person walks past, I'll say, "Hey, I got a Black History book." But I will tell you, I've had, oh man, 15 white people buy it when I was on the bridge or more. I didn't say anything to them, and they stopped and said, "Hey, man, what is that?" I got lucky where one of the white people that stopped was a professor in the high school, and he didn't live in Detroit. And he said, "Man, I want to buy your book. I'm taking it back to the school because I want to enlighten some people." Oh man, I didn't say nothing to him. Some of it is, when you're sitting there and you're vending, you get tired real fast, and you figure, hey, I can't say something to everybody, So I'm a limit who I say something to because they got a Black History T-shirt on. So I got a feeling I got a better shot with a Black person. But I've had several white people come on my show. Several white people. I found a white guy out of Scotland who he found out just by chance going through the family home, saw some papers. He's a journalist. Saw some papers that said his great-great-grandfather enslaved Black people in Jamaica. And he feels bad about that. So I said to him, I said, "You live in Scotland." He said, "Man," I said, "Man, any Black people in Scotland?" He said, "Man, we probably can count them on probably less than 100. I said, "Well, okay, you running around Scotland and Europe talking about how you hate what your great-grandfathers did. What's the reaction to the white folks?" He said, "Man, I don't care." I'm looking over what their reaction is. I got to clear my conscience. And then wrote a book about it. I said, well, and then I asked him, I said, "Man, I gotta be honest, are you worried about your life writing that book?" He said, "I've had death threats." I said, "Really?" He said, "Man, but I can't live in fear. I got to tell you." He said, and I do not, and this is what got me. He said, and I do not profit from the sale of the book. I donated to a black nonprofit over in Europe. I found the white guy. I went to the Selma Montgomery Bridge crossing this year. Yeah, I think it's in February or 1st of March. Rode down with some people from the NAN organization, National Action Network, Detroit chapter. And I tell you, it was the first time I ever did that. Because I go to the NAN meetings every so often. I like hearing the calls. And I like being enlightened, and they allow me to say something too. Every so now I got something going on. Man, get the mic. Go on and tell us what you got. And they've supported me in my events and have bought the book. Many of them, not all of them. And I can't ask all of them to buy it, but not all of them, but many of them have bought the book. And I'm thinking, dang, why my man ain't buy it? He at the NAN meeting. The book is only $10. He's a very conscious kind of guy. I'm thinking, but I don't question it, right? So I'm not going down that road. So they had the announcement that, okay, anybody want to go on this? We're gonna rent a minivan and we're gonna drive 13 hours to go to Selma for the bridge crossing. And I sat there and I went to a couple meetings before. I said, man, why I don't have the time to go? We left. What we do? We left late at night one night on a Friday. That's what it was. We left late at night, and then I didn't even have to drive, and I just had to give them a little money on the gas, and then get my own hotel room. We were only there one night, and so I thought, man, I'm going to Selma for the bridge crossing, and it's only going to cost me $200. Why is there no reason that I won't take advantage of this? I got no meetings that I have to attend. So I raised my hand. I said, hey, I want to go. And I thought to myself, man, you should have been doing this all along. Don't let this opportunity get past for the quest for more knowledge. So I went with this one lady who's a staunch activist here in Detroit. She was telling us stories of how white folks have been doing her. She's about 70-something years, and how she's been fighting. And in particular, her fight is against the school system to make sure black folks get a good quality education and fair education. That when she spoke, I sat there and watched the words come out of her mouth. I thought this was the best opportunity for me to do this. And the other people, that it wasn't but 4 other people. I think it was 5 or 6 of us in the van. I ain't even had to drive. So they drove overnight. We stopped here and there, got a little something to eat. We got there Saturday morning. Got there Saturday morning. And I was at home with them people. And I'm thinking, oh man, I'm in Selma. What is this gonna be like? I was at home with them. Them people said, hey, how you doing, sir? Welcome to Selma. How you doing? And check, like I told you, I carry my books with me. I sold 30 books in 2 days. I've interviewed 3 people that I met down there. One was a white guy whose great-great-grandfather was the largest enslaver in Mississippi. He's on my show. Look at it. This dude is running around the country apologizing for what his great-grandfather did. And when I saw him, Mr. White Man, what you doing here? Not that there weren't other white people. What you doing? He said, I'm here for the quest of knowledge. And I'm here to tell my story. He said, I can't apologize because I didn't do it. But I'm here to tell my story. And then when people found out who they was, they let my man have a mic. We want to hear your perspective. On the show, he tells me of how his great-grandfather, large enslaver, was personal friends with the guy Edmund Pettus, who the bridge is named after. There's a movement to rename that bridge, John Lewis Bridge, because John Lewis, the deceased congressman, took a real good beat down on that on that bridge crossing. I walked across that bridge. Man, that 13-mile hour drive there was so enlightening. You know, like I said, it only cost me $250. I had we went some places where the food was free once I got there. I met people that I'm still in contact with. I'm going back next year. Now, how about this? I'm on the committee. I talked to somebody. I see when you're on the mic and I'm sitting in the back, I'm like, well, damn, who was that on the mic? Because if you're on the mic, that means you got a little clout. I go up to the guy to the mic. I say, man, let me tell you what I'm doing. He bought a book, told me about some other people. They bought a book. So if nothing else, I made my money back, and I've been enlightened. And I've been enlightened. And it didn't cost me nothing. But the time, I wasn't doing nothing anyway. More valuable than that. So what I guess my point is, when we talk about us not knowing Black history, if a person says that to me, I say, that's your fault. That's your fault. There is no excuse for you not to know Black history. I'm not just saying because of my book. There are a plethora of books that talk about it from all the angles. Almost everything is covered. There's YouTube videos. There are shows on TV. Tony Brown, I'm taking you way back. There were people like him that talked about it. It's a mindset that we have, not all of us, because there's a good group of conscious people. There's an association that I'm a part of called the ASALH, ASALH, Association for the Study of Life and of African Life and History, started by Carnegie, which you get involved in that group. If you want to learn some Black history, you will be blown away. And they are not the only ones. They want members. Not each state, but I'm sure at least 30 states have chapters. And they meet probably once a month at some museum. That's what ours in Detroit. They meet at the museum. They meet in a coffee shop. And you will sit there and there'll be 13 people sitting at the table, gathering all this knowledge and sharing among themselves. But we'll say, some of us, hey, we don't keep our history alive. What do you want us to, what do you want people to do? They can televise it on TV. They got internet shows, so on and so forth. It takes just a moment. You can watch my show for free. I don't charge nothing. I've been doing it 3 years. I gotta do the interview. I gotta find the people. I gotta do the interview. I edit it just in case the phone rings or whatever happens, and then I type up the description. So it's a little process for me. I do that for free. You can't say that it ain't out there. And it's easy to Google a lot of it. It's on Google. People ask me, where did I get the facts in my book? It ain't like I invented the facts. I ain't gonna lie to you. Don't tell nobody. I said I Googled. And I did go to the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. one day. Found some things there that I did not know. And I had not Googled. Google didn't. But with Google, you got to know what to ask them. So it's a little research in Google. I found one name, like, for example, let me give you I like telling this guy's story. My man, his name is C.R. Patterson. He's born enslaved in the 1870s. No, 1850s, say around there. Born enslaved, so about 1865, teenager. He gets his freedom. Now, when he was on the plantation, my man made him work and fix the horse and buggies. Because, they can break down. The wheels break. It's got components to it. Whatever. The strap breaks where you're fixing the horses. So my man said, "Hey, that's your job on my plantation." Maybe he might have made him pick cotton at the same time, or not the same time, pick cotton today, but you cut off early and go fix the horse. So when he got his freedom, he went into business for himself, fixing horse and buggies. Then he got married. He got kids. One of his sons, I don't know, first one, whatever. He sends to Central State in Ohio, the HBCU. This dude is probably one of the first Black graduates of Central State. So he goes to Central State. He probably learned some form of math and some design and some engineering, but it developed his mind to be able to research and quest to do things, right? So my man then goes back to the dad and says, "Hey, I want to work in the business. We're going to take it to the next level." Well, the next level was now there are motorized cars and they designed their own. It's called Greenfield Motors, the first and probably, I maybe say, the only Black car manufactured in America in history. This is 1905. They did about 15 years manufacturing cars. Well, they was kind of competing against Henry Ford. My man, white guy got money, so it's about a boom, bada bing. He laughed and they didn't. But even after they stopped motorizing cars, they were customizing the body of cars. He had that black slant and was very successful, very well thought of in Greenfield, Ohio. So when I heard that story, I'm tripping. I'm tripping on this. Ain't nobody told me nothing like that. I can only imagine what that might have done for me if, as a young man, and I'm 9 and 10, and I'm bombarded with all these stories of how bad we are. The picture of that guy, and it's probably one of the most famous pictures. My man, he got beat, and you can see the welts on his back. You see that picture? Oh man, that's a famous photo. Some of it is to declare how vicious they can be. That's what I got out of it. Because I know it was nothing he did to deserve that beat. There was nothing he did to deserve that beat. And then I ain't gonna lie, in grade school, you hear about the Dr. Kings and the Thurgood Marshalls and but shoot, Thurgood Marshall, there was a guy at Howard that encouraged Thurgood Marshall to do what he did. Don't remember his name. Thurgood didn't come up and say one day I'm gonna be great. There was somebody ahead of Thurgood Marshall that said, "Let me tell you, young man, you got a little stoop, nice, good-looking guy, tall. You got some ambition. Let me suggest what you should do." He didn't come up with that on his own. And then there were other people that were beside Thurgood Marshall. There was a movie about his life. He wasn't the only one in the room. But they sent Thurgood down to help fight some of those cases, those injustice cases. Big, tall guy, probably didn't take no mess. He went down there and fought, and being smart like he was with that Howard law school education, he went down there and put it on and won. He got to the consciousness of the jury and the judge and said, "Hey, man, that Black guy should not face that penalty. He did not do it." And so on and so forth. And because of how astute he was and how effective he was and how undaunted he was to go for the cases, the United States government, the president of America, appointed him to be Supreme Court Justice, the highest jurisprudence judge of the land. There have been others since him. So it was other people who fought this fight. A lot of lesser known people, I call them foot soldiers. They're all throughout our community. That lady that I was on that bus with, she's a foot soldier. She said, man, they have tried everything to stop it. And all she's trying to do is get equal education for Black students in Detroit. She goes to those meetings and she'll say, many times, I'm the only Black sitting there. I'm by myself. I'm the only Black sitting in the meeting. And I remember one time, I don't know where I was at. The lady says, what we're going to do is we're going to find people, Black folk, to go to these meetings that we assign them to go to. Governmental stuff, school board, police commission, city government, whatever, right? Because, excuse me, if we are not there, then we're depending on the white guy to feel for us when they make their decision. He ain't got to feel for y'all. Especially if feeling for you, us, Black people, is at the expense of some white person. You're going to side with them. That's human nature. That's human nature. So what it behooves us is to go to the meeting and then stand up and say something like, hey, I'm here now. I'm going to report this back to my people. Y'all want to get elected again, or we're going to find somebody to run against you. But you over here talking about because my man looked at the white woman all funny that he need to go to jail. Well, okay, we're gonna have to try to come up with a way to remedy that. We're gonna have to come away and remedy that. That's why we need to step up and be at those functions. But it all stems from us understanding the power that we've already had. That the level that those people before us set for us. That's the catch. Man, them people did all they could to get an education. And then we have some people who don't encourage their kids to get a good night's sleep, don't encourage their kids to get an education. Other kids laugh at the kid who wants to. I spoke at a group and I said, hey, let me tell you, what do we want? So we want to laugh at them, and then what? And then they're gonna grow up one day. They're gonna be 17, and people have been laughing at them and did not help them beyond what their parents did not do. And then we're gonna face them one day, and it's gonna be dark. I'm gonna say it always happens, but I bet you that many of those young people who commit some of those atrocities, let's call them that, all they needed was someone to tell them about how great they are, to encourage them to do better. And don't beat them down with this history of how bad we are. Man, the white folks have turned that history around. So voodoo ain't bad. They coined it that to make it sound. Voodoo got a cute little name to it myself. And when I go to New Orleans, I go down there looking for the history of voodoo. When I'm in Louisiana, I want to know what is it. And a couple of people enlightened me. They said, man, let me tell you, all it is Black folks trying to do something to survive because the white folks wouldn't let us go to the hospitals. We had to come up with our own remedies. And then we let the white man change it and say it's bad. No, it ain't bad. They wanted some of it too. And a lot of what the voodoo people, let's call it, doctors and stuff, that they we use today. Eating those dandelions and kale, and I don't know them all. I need to because I need to eat better. I ain't gonna lie to you. But I do juice. I need to juice more. But that's what they did. You got a question, Amy? I see your hand up.
Hi. Yeah, I wanted to make a comment. You were talking about not telling young people how bad they are. I do stuff like that, where I tried to be more positive as an individual, who cared about young people. The problem was, yeah, I went through the mental health route, and I also used some of the academic, went through the academic route. The entire academic system and mental health system is even their payment, and the words they use to justify payment is all based on is problem based. So you don't get paid, for your time. If you frame things in a more positive way, folks just don't understand it. They just don't understand it. So it makes it a lot harder um,
Well,
to
hold on.
do.
Let me ask you. When you say the
Mhm,
payment method, the
mhm.
way you got paid,
The way the entire system is set up,
okay,
in order to justify this to the like insurance and that kind of thing, everything has to be framed as a problem, and a serious problem at that.
I see what you're saying.
There's no
Oh,
time and there's no space, and the people and your coworkers can't understand you. They don't know what you're talking about when you say something positive. It just
yeah, and I would agree because there's a whole big ploy to not help black people, not everybody, and so they don't understand because there have been a lot of movements in history that have been there to help black people, and then they slanted it differently.
I
To
know.
give you an example, the one that really comes to mind first is the Black Panthers. They made them sound like they were out there just vigilantes trying to kill white police officers.
Yes, they
That was
did.
not the the cause of it.
I know. That's a perfect
I
example.
didn't know that, and I was one that thought that what it was. They had me psyched out a little bit.
Hmm.
I'll be perfectly honest, because I mean, I didn't know other Panthers growing up, what have you, but some of what they said. But when I did find out is when I watched the movie about them, and they were feeding kids breakfast.
Hmm.
So when
Hmm.
I saw that, I said, "Well, that ain't what I was told." All I thought was, the Stokely Carmichaels and the Huey Newtons and whatnot, they were out there just doing something wrong against black people. No, I'm sure that they didn't shoot first.
Right.
That didn't make sense. You
I know.
outgunned. You
I know.
outmanned.
I
You ain't
know.
shoot first.
I know. I think that's the main problem, is that not much has changed, over a long time. And folks, it takes so much energy just to keep your head above water from day to day, that there really is no energy or time to add anything more to the burden that's every day. That's what I think.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but a lot of times it doesn't take a lot of time. I spoke at a Boys and Girls Club 2 weeks ago. That whole process took me 2 hours. I'm talking about to get there, to leave there, and the hour that I spent there. It took me 2 hours.
Mhm.
And I had to get over my anxiety of walking in the building, of what these kids were going to say, or what they were going to, how they were going to look at me.
How
What did
did
it?
they look at you?
Oh man, I tell you, there was 16 kids in the room, 17, something like that. There were four of them that spoke up. And there was one young man that was in the back of the room. He didn't let me see him. And when he talked, I couldn't see him talking, but I know it was coming from his direction. And he was saying some intelligent things. And he didn't want the other kids to see him talking.
Yep.
And I pointed him out. I pointed him out. As I was coming to conclusion, I said there was a young man in the back of the room that he was talking. Y'all need to envy that dude because he going places. Because if you can't talk at work when you get older, because you practice talking in this kind of setting among your peers, they're gonna run over you.
They're gonna run over you either way.
Yeah,
But I there's so many different ways, I think, to live black, that you can talk, you can not talk, however way you do it, as long as you stay alive, it's all good. That's
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I know. I totally don't hurt nobody else. All that is well, but we need people out there to fight. We
It's
need to
exhausting.
we need to move the needle. And the people that were fighting, they were the ones that was their job at the Boys and Girls School. I pointed them out. There was a lady sitting in there. There was a couple guys sitting in there in the room, and I'm sure they did it for the money too. But they might have been able to find something else to do for the money because it probably didn't pay well. But and one of the guys said, "Man, I do this because I want to beat somebody." A lot of times the teachers say that I want to do this because I want to reach somebody.
Meet somebody? What does that mean?
Reach.
Oh, reach. Oh,
Reach.
reach somebody.
I want to reach somebody.
Uh,
I went
uh,
to a back to school rally yesterday here, Detroit, getting ready, going back. And it was sponsored by one of the local churches. They had 4 food trucks giving away free food. I mean, big sandwiches. If I was hungry, I'd have wanted one. I just wasn't hungry and didn't want to stand in the line. Then it started to rain too. I was hoping the rain would make some of the people walk out of the line. They were big sandwiches. And I was standing there and I'm looking around and I'm thinking to myself, there are people who are here because they want to help.
mm-hmm.
And it didn't take much. Some of it is that's their career choice. Some of it is that's what they decide to do, and it makes a difference. Let me give you a short story. I was talking to a guy I interviewed who he's out of Atlanta. He's got some youth organization, right? And he was having some of these young black boys, and he was talking to one of them, and he said something about one of them about how the mother had OD'd or something like that. And one of the kids, he said, before this time, this day, this kid was the hardest one in the class. He said when the kid looked at him, he almost wanted to tremble, but he know he could probably take it. He said so he couldn't believe it that this kid when he brought that story up that about a lady ODing or something like that, the kid started crying, and he ran out of the room, and so my man, being the counselor, he had to go out and see, well, hey, what happened, man? What's wrong with you? He said the kid gave him the hardest hug he ever had in his life. That's when I started crying when he's telling this story.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't help it. I started
Mm-hmm.
booing. I said, really? He said the kid said, because that's what happened to me. I
Mm-hmm.
found my mother dead with a needle in her arm. He said,
Mm-hmm.
that's what happened to me. And he said he couldn't do nothing but keep hugging the dude. He didn't want to, he didn't want to, he didn't want to give him no more, but just to keep hugging him and saying, man, I got you. He said that kid, from that moment on, finally felt that there was somebody that was in his corner. He said the kid did a 360 in 2 days.
And that's all it takes.
That's all it takes.
I know.
And some of it is because we understand, and I use the history as the component to say how throughout history we've dealt with various issues and we've come out on top. I mean, slavery was brutal, but there were a number of us that went to college, that owned businesses, became productive citizens, and did not let that stop us. I went to Galveston, Texas. I spoke in Galveston this past Juneteenth. And it's crazy. One, the guy read the order, General Gordon Granger, that the slaves were free, order number 3. He then tell them, he said, but I'm going to tell you, I don't want you hanging out downtown. I don't want you going by the army barracks. I want you to stay on the plantation and we'll pay you.
Wow.
And we'll pay you. That's where sharecropping let people think. That's
Yeah.
where, that concept kind of began.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really a love of understanding and compassion that I think if we all had more, and there's a lot of efforts that don't get recognized for the love and compassion in those schools, it's those teachers. I had one young lady who she also came on the show because she does some Black History stuff. She said she was turned around to leave being a teacher when her principal told her, that girl, why you putting so much energy in her? She ain't going to amount to nothing anyway. She said, well, I knew then I'm in the wrong institution. I got to be more effective than having somebody be able to tell me that.
Mm-hmm.
So now she teaches Black history stories in the school system.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the quest. And there's so much of it. And the other thing I think, though, is that whatever a person reads, be Black history or otherwise, reading exercises the mind. If a person wants to be a good basketball player, they got to go practice basketball. But if you want to be good in math, science, or any discipline, if you read, your mind will be exercised uh, to effectively grasp what you see and learn. And that's one of the reasons why I think Black history books or any books are good, because I don't know anybody who reads a lot that's not smart. I don't. I mean, there were some kids in my school that, and I didn't read as much as I should have, but I do remember reading a few books that really took me away. Made me, learn about underwater life or life in some other country. And so I do remember that. Now, now I've made my mission to read more, and not just Black history, but just in general, because it cut the TV off and to learn. And so this is what I'm doing. So how did you find out about me?
I went on Eventbrite and I was
Okay.
looking for, I'm really into like Black art, Black writers, and then any kind of ethnic or cultural writer, poetry, any kind of art. Because I'm always curious about how other people live under American oppression.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do
Hmm.
you live in Detroit area or somewhere else?
No, I'm actually in Connecticut.
Oh, in Connecticut. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. I've been to Hartford. I got family in Windsor.
Hmm. Yep, I know
There
about
is
this.
there's a couple Black history museums in Connecticut because there's a national trail that
Uh-huh.
chronicles slave escape routes.
Hmm.
And if you go to my show, Strong Inspirations, you got to go down the list somewhere. But there's a couple of them, or if you just put in the search bar Connecticut, there's a couple of them that are based out of Connecticut. One that comes to mind is there was a school for Black girls, and it was a white lady who started the school. And she only wanted Black girls, and I don't remember what city it's in, but the school is now a museum because they did all they could to close the school down. Because initially, I think the story goes, the school was for white kids. When she got involved, she said, I'm gonna allow Black kids to come. The white parents said, no, we're not gonna have that. She says, well, that's what I'm going to do. And then they pulled it out, and then it became a school for all Black kids and won national awards of excellence until they firebombed it and so on and so forth. And so it's people who put their life on the line to help in those kind of ways that I think if more people heard some of those stories, they'll decide to do it themselves. Because like I say, it only took me 2 hours to go to that Boys and Girls Club.
Hmm.
And what happened is I was driving down the street and I rode past it, and it was during the day, and I said, let me go in here, and because I'm interested in doing that. And so there was a guy who had a lanyard on, name badge, whatever. And the only thing, I ain't got out the car, and I told him what I was, who I was, what I do. And he was one of the counselors. So he said, yeah, man. He took my number and he called me and said, hey, let's do it. So I ain't had to get out of the car to even get it started. And that was pretty amazing. Then they said, well, how about next week? And I was like, yeah, okay, I got time next Wednesday. And and it was crazy because they were so excited once I finished. They asked me to come back in the afternoon. And because I did a morning session. I was like, yeah, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
And
Good
so it's that.
deal.
So now when I travel, I seek those out. I got to go to Atlanta this week, and I've contacted the Boys and Girls Club. And there's so many of those kind of institutions that do those kind of things. Because if we don't do it, then what?
He'll
We got,
survive like
yeah,
we did.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Are
But
you
then we got
retired?
somebody that we got to worry about that we
Are
didn't take
you
the time.
are you retired? So you
No,
have
no,
time.
no,
Oh.
no. I don't think I ever will retire.
No, we
Yeah,
can afford it, right?
yeah. Well, no, it's not. It's not as much that as I just love doing it. I'm not doing nothing but speaking. I don't need to stop that. I wake up in the morning, I'm tweeting and texting some Black History facts. I'm talking about my book. Did you see it? The book?
Yep, yep, when you
Yeah,
hold it up. Yeah,
yeah.
pretty
I'm
cool.
talking
I
about
wrote
the
down
book.
your
Talking
strong
about
inspiration podcast,
yeah.
a couple of the nothings you talked about.
I got a children's book.
Oh, they did it.
Yeah, they did it. It's 30 rich Black people that lived in the 1800s in the book, and I don't
What
even use the
drives
word
you?
slave.
What because you are passionate. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. I don't have to
what
retire from
drives you? Like,
it.
where do you get this energy from?
Uh, yeah, it become a mission, I guess. Plus, it's fun. Yeah, I mean, I travel somewhere and I speak, and they usually no more than an hour, and then maybe do a little book signing or something like that. And I'm there to see the city, so I go places I haven't seen. I meet people who think like I think, and then we'll sit there and congregate about strategies and how to think this way. So now I'm around folks who like what I like, and I've built relationships across the country because I've done that. And now I found people who think like I do, and I do what I can to support them in some form or fashion, and it comes back, and maybe it helps me keep me young. Because if I retire and don't do this, then what do I do? Go fishing? I don't like fishing. I don't play golf. I play tennis. I don't play golf. So if it's not this, then what? And so I don't have to stop. All I'm doing is thinking and speaking. My website is businessintheblack.net. Yeah, businessintheblack.net. That's the website. On there it talks about all that I'm doing and where I'm speaking at. People can order the books on the website. They can, have links to some of the shows or my broadcasts on the website. Uh, I'm working on a movie. Hopefully it'll be out in February, titled They Did It. It's about 12 Black people who lived in the 1800s and about their lives, narrated, let's say, by Booker T. Washington. Even though it's different timelines, that someone was born, what have you. But, you know, writers' privilege. And so that's the other thing. So I don't have no reason to stop doing this.
Yeah,
I
you
wake
are
up, like I say,
passionate.
I'm tweeting.
Hmm.
And now I got a new friend in Connecticut and you in some respects. And hopefully you tell people about what I'm doing and and what this is and the mission because using Black history, and I call it good Black history, makes a difference because it made me feel better. Because again, I mean, Dr. King only lasted 13 years. By the time he was the pastor of that church and the time they assassinated him, it was no more than 13 years. And in 13 years, he did all that, including the Nobel Peace Prize.
Mm-hmm.
Before, the guy shot him when he's on the patio of a hotel in Memphis, Tennessee, down there fighting so that the garbage workers could get a fair wage.
Hmm.
That's all he was doing.
Mhm.
He wasn't bothering nobody.
Mhm.
He was down there fighting so that the sanitation workers could get a fair wage. And somebody did not like him enough to snuff out his life for something that like that. And there's so many other stories that we don't know of in a similar circumstance, you know, other than Dr. King. There's a guy on my show. He was a bishop. He's probably deceased now. He was a bishop in Montgomery, Alabama, I think it is. And he was telling his parishioners, hey, we need to step up, fight back, what have you. He said he'd been spit at, cussed at, punched at, shot at, and everything. He man of God.
I believe it.
And one night the KKK came to his house. And he said that scared him. And he got down on his knees and he prayed. And he can't tell you why they left.
What year was that? Was that
I'm sure. I mean, he when I interviewed him, he was probably he was 70, so it probably was in the 50s.
okay?
Yeah,
You think stuff like that happens these days?
in some respects, yeah, yeah. Like that young kid in South Carolina that was just running and jogging through the neighborhood.
Yeah. Lord.
Yeah, same type of scenario. Them guys got mad at him and hunted him down, blocked his path, and then shot him.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I went to private school up here in Connecticut. All kinds of things happened.
oh yeah,
Hmm.
and it's hard to understand the reason why. Because there were times when they didn't want us to go into their clothing stores. I've had people say when we went in, we couldn't try the clothes on. Uh, if we touched it, we had to buy it. We had to walk in the back door in the restaurants, things like that. And so we just got tired of that kind of treatment. It wasn't fair. They still wanted our money, though. They just sitting in the back of the bus where the engine is. It's 95 degrees in Alabama, you still sitting in the back where the engine is. And then you say, well, okay, well, we're going to stop supporting this. We ain't coming in your stores. We're not going to bother you. We're going to build our own business districts. And then they got mad at that.
It's always something.
Yeah,
It's always something.
it's always something. So we're going to sign off. I'll
Yeah,
be back
this was
again
great.
next Monday.
Okay.
Tell somebody to join me. And then follow me on the businessintheblack.net so that when I do this again later in the year, because I'm also going to do this with educators across the country for them to talk about techniques to teaching Black history. Because as you may know, and probably parts of Connecticut, there's parts here in Michigan, but there's entire states like Florida that are trying to limit that what is taught. And how do people counteract
Mhm.
it? And so I want to talk to some educators to maybe we can come up with some different plans. And there's going to be some people that lead that conversation who they have organizations to do just that, such as one called Faith in Florida. She's agreed to come on. And so it'll be all on the website, businessintheblack.net, and strong inspiration on YouTube. The books are on Amazon. And I thank you so much, Amy Johnson, for coming on. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
It's great.
And I invite you to come next Monday, same time, 7 p.m.
Okay. Have a
All
good
right.
night. All right.
Thank you. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.